Yeah, hi there. These comments are for 0626. This is Michael. I am your English 106 instructor here at California State University, San Bernardino. I want to go over your essay, Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, give you some basic comments, give you a score so you can get some video feedback on this. So I'm taking a look at Part 1 right now. So you're discussing the nature of book reviews. Let's just look at a sample paragraph. You say paragraph 3, the readers who read my book will be those to see how the government is when it comes to one's protection. Now what you didn't say here, you should answer, is what do you plan to include in your book reviews? So you need to specifically address that question. So you have not really addressed that. So that would be one thing you might want to take notes of. Maybe write that down. If you want to revise this essay, I will give you that option. Okay, let's go to Part 2. Now the main thing is, let's take a look at the thesis. So your paragraph 1 in Part 2, I'm looking at it right now, so let's get near the end. You say, while the story talks about a lawyer who one can call the underdog, who takes their cause for his own prefect. Yeah, I'm not sure what that means. Say, this is a true story. The legal system and the struggles of the families are affected from this tragedy. So you don't really have a thesis. You want to answer the $64,000 question here is, why do you like or dislike this book based on what set of criteria? Right? You kind of lay that out in the beginning. And then when you get into the actual essay, you can begin building your case in those different body paragraphs. So your second paragraph is too short. You say the writer has a great form of detail when it comes to the story. I'll be looking at the style of the book, how long it takes to the rising action. I think you want to say climax, and the way the author gives detail, and if I like the book. Okay, now there's your thesis. So maybe combine paragraph 1 and 2 together. Okay, so you say the book, you'll be looking at the style of the book, how long it takes to get to the climax, the way the author gives details, and if you liked it or not. But your paragraph 3 says the main point of the book is, from my eyes. Not sure how that connects back to this thesis that you just created. So, but I guess you wanted to discuss a little bit about what the book was about before you got into your other parts. Okay, now paragraph 4 looks like it's illustrating one of the main points of your thesis. The book had shown to give a very good amount, I would say number of details, not amount. Because amount we use with uncount nouns, and we use number typically with count nouns. You have in the begging of the book, I think you want to say they're beginning, not begging. He also shows how the family's affected from their child being sick with leukemia. Now, if you bring up the idea that the writer gives a good number of details, or gives details, I think the bigger question is, well, why does the writer do it, or how does it affect the story? Does it help it? Does it hurt it? Does it make it more or less interesting to the audience? I don't think you've really answered that question there, and you didn't even give any examples of the details that the writer uses, so you haven't really supported very well the topic of paragraph 4 in part 2 of the writing assignment. Okay, paragraph 5, you say the writer uses a good amount of repetition. For example, he talks about the contaminated well he allows, and he says wells, GH, not just the wells. This is his form of giving as much detail on what he's talking about. Daisies that the children were getting water from, he repeats this, so one does not forget what the story's about. There, I think you're getting to it. You haven't really satisfied what you're trying to do there, but you're beginning to explain why the writer uses the repetition and then what effect it has on the audience. I think that is a good connection. You want to make more of those kinds of connections, because that demonstrates that you're actually engaging in some good critical thinking. Now, you're having a lot of problems with your word choice, your sentence structure, and some of those things. So in your rewriting of this essay, you definitely want to clean up the essay more than what it is right now. And also, when you say the writer uses a good amount of repetition, you want to make a statement, make not just a factual statement, but make more of an argument, say, to engage the audience and to help them understand the organization of the essay. The writer uses a good amount of repetition. If you make a statement like that, that's more of a claim, and then it's much easier for you to defend that argument in that paragraph, and it gives you more of an argumentative tone, not just an informative tone. So in paragraph 6, your topic sentence, it says each chapter from the book, you want to say is, not are set in a certain way. But again, for what purpose? What effect does that have on the audience? Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? So you're not making the complete connection between what the writer is doing and whether or not you think it's effective. So you want to definitely try to make that connection. So then you explain how the chapters are set up. I think you said something in there that's good. Har wants the reader to truly understand what was going on, so I think it's good to point out something like that. Still, you can improve that topic sentence there. Okay, paragraph 7 of your book review, you say the book's purpose of showing how the government does not take care of the people and community is still affected today's standards. How about still affects today's standards, maybe? Might be a better way to say that. Then you give an example. Former co-worker, my brother was affected with toxic chemicals in the water in Boston, and also a brother. Okay, so I think here's what you're trying to say here, is you're saying that the purpose of the book, what the author is trying to achieve, is relevant, maybe, to what's happening in our society today. So I think you could probably rewrite the topic sentence in paragraph 7 to reflect that kind of purpose. That would give it more of an evaluation. Then it helps understand why you're giving the example of your former co-worker of your brother who was affected from toxic chemicals in Boston and her brother. You say the pain was unbearable. You say this is an example how the purpose of the book is about. I don't think you want to say that. You say this is an example of why the purpose of this book is relevant to what's happening in our society right now. That's what you want to say in the middle of that paragraph 7. So I think you need to make a better connection with paragraph 7 in terms of what the writer is doing and how the writer is doing it and why that's relevant to our society. So then we can better understand why you're bringing up the example of your coworker. Then your last paragraph you have, I think Jonathan Har is a reliable source on the book of civil action. He took his time. You said when it came to writing this book, it took him about 7.5 years to research the story of the families. Shows how much effort he put. This is pretty good. So I like how you did this. The one thing that you might also put here is not just reliable, but the writer is credible. I think that's something that you can also bring out. And then part 3 I think is okay. So, what we have a paper that has strengths and some weaknesses. I think you have addressed all 3 parts of the writing task, right? You've done that. But with part 1, there was one part of it, what you plan to include in your book review didn't address that question, so you're missing a little bit from part 1. Part 2, as I mentioned during the video, you can probably do some restructuring and try to tighten up your organization and make the purpose framed more as an evaluation. So that means you have to restructure some of those topic sentences so they introduce arguments and not just facts. So those are some things you want to think about in terms of your revision of this particular paper. And then generally you need to polish the essay a little bit more than it is to bring it up to college level standards. So based on my comments here, I'm going to give you a 70 even on this paper, based on the comments that I just said.